Hi, and thanks for watching this Finance with Excel video. In this video, we're going to make a pie graph that illustrates the five main categories, or at least what I consider the five main categories of the federal budget for the United States of America. To get data for this, we're going to go to the Congressional Budget Office website at cbo.gov. And then the first thing, this is in February 2017 when I'm making this, so the website might have changed if you're watching this after this date. But we go to Budget and Economic Outlook. And then we come down here to 10-year budget, so the budget data, 10-year budget projections. And then down towards the bottom, there is this spending projections by budget account. And I'm just going to pick the most recent one for me, and it's going to download a workbook. And this is the CBO. I've already downloaded this workbook, and the CBO takes the federal budget, and they break it up into, in this case, 1,744 different line items. We're going to take each one of these 1,744 different line items, and we are going to assign them to one of five major categories. We're going to assign them to national defense, Social Security, healthcare, which is Medicaid and Medicare, interest on the national debt, and everything else. And then we're going to create a pie graph that shows us how big of the national budget each one of these is. So, to start with, I'm just going to copy this into a new workbook, and here it is. I'm going to copy this into a new workbook so that I don't screw up the last one, because we don't need most of the data that's on this page. So just to simplify things, I'm going to come over here, and I don't want the budget projections for beyond 2017, so I'm going to get rid of all of those. And I don't need any of this budget authority. This is basically the CBO saying how much Congress is authorized to spend in each one of these segments. I don't need any of these all the way through function. I don't need any of those subcategories. And I don't need any of these first three subcategories to do what we're doing. So this has greatly simplified and I'm just going to get rid of these extra things. So now we have a much more simplified budget that just has major spending category, agency, bureau, and 2017 budget. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to create a column, and this column I'm going to label as my, or just budget category. And then in this is where we're going to put each of our five different budget categories. So if we go up into our tab and click on data and then click on filter, we're going to be just doing most of this with just filters. So first we're going to do is we're just going to come here to major spending categories. So now if you want just their kind of basic crack at this, it will, you just look at, you can go to major spending category. I'm going to make a couple of what I think are relatively intuitive adjustments to this, but we'll just start with that. So net interest is the spending category for interest on the national debt. And so I'm just going to click that, and so now all the major spending categories are just net interest, so I'm going to go interest. And then I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it in each one of these categories. Okay, so now if I go back to select all, we can see that some of these have interest payments on them, and the rest that aren't were blank. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to now go to do defense spending. So if defense spending is part of this these major spending categories. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to click in everything that is major spending category defense. We are just going to identify as defense, and we're going to copy and paste all of that. Now there's a couple of categories that the CBO doesn't put into defense spending, but I would consider defense, and these are the things like veterans affairs, which I consider part of the defense budget because they're part of the benefits that we promise to the soldiers who are defending us. So I'm going to put them in part of defense. To get to those, we're going to come to bureau, and we're going to type in vet, and we can see that Department of Veterans Affairs, Veterans Health Administration, and United States Court of Appeals for Veterans all show up in vet, and so we're just going to select all of those, and we are going to call all of those defense as well. Except this last one that says interest, even though it's from the Department of Veterans Affairs, this would be like interest payments on trust funds or whatnot that the Defense Department might have, but which we will lop into the national or the net interest, the interest on the debt. Okay, so now we're going to go back and we have selected all these. Now, the last thing with defense is we're just going to go and we are going to select all the blanks because we don't want the ones that have already been identified, and we're just going to make sure that we've gotten everything that is part of the Defense Department. So if it's part of Department of Defense, or I guess Civil Defense, we don't really need Public Defender Service. There are a handful that didn't end up getting identified, so we're going to put these with the defense budget. Okay, so that finishes the defense budget for us. And so now we go to select all, and then we can go to select all. And then we now see that none of the filters are done, or there's no filters anymore. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to do healthcare. And healthcare is basically Medicaid and Medicare. So to get to that, we're not going to use their Medicaid and Medicare because there's some things that go in there that I want to add. So I'm just going to do Bureau. And for health insurance, it's the Department of Health and Human Services. So we'll just type in health and human. So the Department of Health and Human Services. So everything the Department of Health and Human Services is basically healthcare spending. So we're going to call this healthcare. And then, so now we're going to go back and we're going to select all. And then everything that is part of the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services. So we're going to type, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services. All of these are going to be healthcare as well. Okay. So we select all, and now once again there are no filters. So then the next thing we do is we need Social Security. So we're going to go back to Bureau, and we're going to type in Social Security. And so Social Security Administration, this is all going to be Social Security, except for the one that's already been labeled as net interest. And then lastly, everything else is just going to be an other. And so we're just going to select only the blanks, and we're going to label all of these blanks as other. And so now we have the entire federal budget assigned to one of 4 different categories. We can see if we click on this, everything goes to either defense, healthcare, interest, other, or Social Security. So now an easy way to create a pie graph for this is to start by using a pivot table. So just click anywhere on this data, and then we are going to go to home, or go to insert, and then insert a pivot table. And it's going, as long as you're clicked on the data that you want, you can see that it automatically selected that data. If it didn't select the right data, you could manually put the data that you want in for the pivot table, and then you just click OK. So this is going to bring us to a new tab, or new table. And over here, we want budget category to be on the rows. See, it's good budget category. And then it says, what do we want in each of these columns? Well, it says 2017 budget. So you can see over here, it summed up the 2017 budget in each of the various categories. So we're going to go home. We're going to hit $signs. And we can see that this is the budget for each of these main categories. So we also want to take a look at this as a percent of the budget. So just add 2017 back into this values again, but then come down here to this arrow, click on it, and click Value Field Settings, and it'll give you this box. On the second tab of this box, it says Show Value As, and we want a percent of column total. And so now it gives us the budget as a percent of the column total. Last thing we want to do is we want to add a pie graph that shows us this in a nice pretty setting. So we'll just click anywhere on the pivot table, go to Insert, and then click on this pie graph. And we've got a little pie graph. But we want to change the little pie graph a little bit, so we're going to go to Design. We're going to look at all these different designs, and I'm going to click on the one that gives me the name and the percent, and then I'm just going to click on, I'm going to change the formatting a little bit so it's a little bit prettier. So now we can look at this budget, and we can see that in the 2017 federal budget, healthcare and Social Security account for about half of the budget, defense about 16%, interest on the national debt is 7%, and those are basically non-negotiable as far as what the government could cut arbitrarily, and everything else in the budget is 26%. I guess, I mean, you could cut a little bit out of defense if you wanted to. So this is my take on the national budget. This also lets you learn how to use a pivot table, also lets you learn how to use or make a little pie graph, and I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching.